So women in America tend to be bigger boned than I'm used to in Asia. But these three girls were seated, and I just went up to them and started talking to them. And then I noticed within the first 10 seconds that the girl in the middle, her knees were really high. Like she's seated on a bench, but when she was crossing her legs, but they were like up to here. I mean, like thinking, if she stood up, I bet she'd be really tall, like a basketball player. Anyway, we were talking, and then she just said, "You're too short for me." Just like out, and then there's like silence. No one was saying anything. So I said, just the first thought that came to my mind was, that empowering belief. It takes a stronger man to date a taller woman. So I just blurted that out. And then she said, "Yeah, that's so true." And the other girls were like, yeah. And then they started asking me all these questions. I'm like, can't even do it on me. So that reframe really helps. But then I needed to do more research, right? Research into men who, for example, I wanted to find examples of other men who were my height who were dating taller women. And then, of course, this led into conditioning. So notice the research conditioning pair, right? So an easy one was Tom Cruise, right? So I just started looking at all these photos of him with Nicole Kidman, him with Katie Holmes, and him with pretty much any woman in Hollywood. And it was ridiculous because the height disparity was insane. I don't think he even tried to hide it. He didn't wear pumps or those concealable heels in the shoe thing. And the girls didn't conceal it either. The girls wore heels. So it was even more monstrous. They were 4 inches taller than him, but with heels, suddenly they're half a foot taller. But he didn't care. He was just powerful, just there. And I began to condition my mind into seeing that as an example of a powerful man, because he was that much more powerful than the men who were the same height as those women. I conditioned my mind by, I stopped watching any TV show that made fun of short men. I just cut out of my life anybody except the girls I was dating who were making fun of short men. I remember these sitcoms that would make fun of short men. I stopped watching sitcoms entirely. If you feel very needy a lot, like you meet this girl, you date her, and suddenly you're attached before you even had sex, and you don't really know that much about her, but you're just attached about it. It might be because you're watching a lot of Korean romance comedies or Korean dramas. That's the case in Asia. I don't know about here. I don't think you guys are watching Korean stuff. But, or maybe you're listening to some really sappy songs. You got to cut that out. So conditioning is both positive and negative. You cut out all the bad influences and replace them with positive ones. So Tom Cruise, another guy who I discovered early on, was a guy who dated, let me see if I can get this straight, Jennifer Love Hewitt, Mandy Moore, Lindsay Lohan, Ashley Simpson, Rihanna for a little while, and you might not have ever heard his name. You would probably recognize him because he was in That 70s Show, Fez. Remember Fez? Wilmer Valderrama, right? This guy's like a C-list TV actor, and he was dating A-list teen actresses at the time. And this guy had game. It wasn't because he had more status or more money. He was 5'7" Latino guy. And I just printed out all the images I could of this guy, and I started to emulate him and learn as much as I could about him. And this is just identity work. Right? So identity work with conditioning. Other things you can do with your conditioning that you maybe already are doing, of course, they're your visualizations and your affirmations. In the Aura Dating Academy, we have a 2-hour class just on visualizations and affirmations, so I can't go into much more detail here. But also the identity work. In an Aura Dating Academy, we have a 2-hour class just on identity and archetypes. And with that, basically, you want to decide who your ideal self is. You just make a list. I remember one of my school friends back in Toronto we knew each other since 10 years old. Around the time he went to college, he decided he was going to be James Bond, minus the MI5 affiliation. He was Canadian, Chinese guy, a little bit shorter than me. But he just made a list of all the things James Bond could do, and over the course of about 12 years or so, he just went out and learned them all. One at a time, just tackled them all. That's how he wrote me in about halfway through to do ballroom dancing and salsa, but he also learned how to sail boats. He got this yachting license. He skydived. He learned Kempo, karate, jiu-jitsu, what's that thing? Kendo with the swords. He learned how to fire guns. He learned how to fly airplanes. He learned how to jump out of planes like on a regular basis. And he was an engineer, started off as an engineer in the top engineering school in Canada, and then went on to do a JD and MBA. Is now a law partner somewhere. So he just went one at a time, just checking the list off. It became his ideal self. And now he's happily married with some kids. And you can do the same thing, actually. And you can do it mentally, not just through skills. Right? So let's say you want to look a certain way, or talk a certain way, or stand a certain way, or move a certain way. How are you going to be that way? Well, the first step is to find somebody who's already doing or living that ideal life. So if you're a shorter guy, you find a shorter guy who's dating taller women, if that's what you want. Right? So that's what I did. I just replaced in my mind, I inundated my mind with those images. And that's where the Christian spiritual cultivation comes into play, as well as the Buddhist. Pretty much any real religious cultivation comes into play. You remove the influences of the world, the carnal world, the sinful world. Don't listen to MTV and all that. You got to throw that out of your house and replace it with the Word of God. That should be, just take out all the pollution and replace it with the good stuff. And it's the same structural framework. I just changed the content. Right? So now it's about how attractive you want to be and what limiting beliefs you want to replace. And another one is race. You wanted to get to that, right? And that was a big one for me. Now, with race, there are a lot of other things that I could say because it's such a complicated thing. In addition to conditioning, you should think about compensating. Now, compensating might sound bad, but let's put it this way. If height is one of your issues, let's say you're 20% shorter than the guys you're competing with, well, then you should be 20% more muscular. I think if it's sort of like Dungeons and Dragons, you get your intelligence, the strength, and all that, and you're maybe low on intelligence, but you can pop it up on strength so you can balance it out. And that's something you can do. You can actually compensate for it. And that's something I saw in every area of my life. I wanted to, if I found any disadvantages that I had, I would make up for them in other ways. Now with race, let's take the Asians in America, in North America, Canada. I know that the best. And I think it's very similar to Australia, with Asians in Australia. What are some of the negative stereotypes that Asians have? Well, let me help you out, because you're not all Asian here, so you may not realize this. Asians are effeminate, they're passive, they're pushovers, they're passive-aggressive, they're soft skin like girls, they have small penises, they're nerdy, they don't know how to talk to people, they're sheltered, they live with mom, they're robots, they have no facial expressiveness, they're like poker face, things like that. Okay, those are pretty negative. And what are some positive things, though? There's some pros and cons to everything. What are some positive things? Well, the upside is that the Asian stereotype is that they're industrious, hardworking, they're disciplined, they're good with computers, they're good with math, they're intelligent, they're stable, dependable, they're going to be responsible and mature, and those are good things. And in fact, all of those traits that I've just mentioned are universally attractive to women, as the evolutionary psychology has shown. So those are good things. However, you're missing all of the sexual parts, and that's where the negativity is. Now, if that's the case, then what you can do is you realize what the pros and cons are, as the way the world views you, and you can flip that around. One way that this came home to me was when I was in Toronto. I was house sitting for a professor in a pretty nice condo in downtown Toronto. Coming home from school, the guy behind the desk, this is my first month living there, he said, hey, our computer systems are down. I don't know what's wrong. Can you help us out? Can you fix this? Like, what? I don't know shit about computers. Why do you think I know about computers, Like, no, I can't. And I was thinking, at first, I was pretty offended, but then after a few minutes, I realized, actually, that's a cool racism to have. Like, if it's like a positive racism, he thinks I'm smarter than I am. That's not so bad. I'll live with that. And that was the kernel of this thought, that the positive parts of it I can keep, but then I directly counteract the negative parts of it as soon as possible. So if the negativity associated with being an Asian guy are that you're effeminate, you're pushover, you're not sexy or sexual, then right off the bat, I want to show people that I am not that. Right? So you could go extreme and you get tattoos and piercings and go real bad boy, riding a Harley Davidson or something like that, right? And I've known quite a few guys in America who've tried to do that. But you just show that you're not effeminate, that you're not a pushover, that you're assertive, you're aggressive when you need to be, that you're dominant. And her first thought when she sees you won't be that you're Asian, right? Her first thought will be power, charm, sexy. And then, secondarily, she'll think, oh, wait, he's Asian. But clearly, you're not the Asian that she's used to seeing because you don't match the effeminate stereotype. But all of the good stuff is still there, because she'll think, oh, he's Asian, so he must be dependable, stable, intelligent, and all that other stuff, even though that may not be true at all.